Hey everyone, welcome back to Self-Serving Skillet. Today we are going to make a cup of coffee for less than 50 cents a day. This coffee is so cheap that if you were to have 3 cups a day, you would be coming in at just over $1. When I was in school, I drank a lot of coffee and a lot of beer, and brewing your own coffee is a lot easier than brewing your own beer. So let's get down to this. You want to start out by finding a grocery store that will allow you to grind your own beans, grind beans that you bought there, obviously, and most of these will also have a bulk section where you can buy a couple beans, taste a couple beans, taste what they can do, and make a good decision about what you want to do. You don't have to commit to the entire pound. And then a lot of grocery stores will also have coffees by the pound in the whole bean. We want it ground, we want to grind it there because the flavor is in the whole bean, and the longer we expose it to oxygen, just like pepper from a pepper mill, is going to taste a lot more fresh than pre-ground pepper that you're going to buy in a container. So too is the same with coffee. So when you select your beans, you're going to go over to the machine and you're going to turn it to the absolute most coarse setting. We'll get into that a little bit later, but you want this to be pretty coarse because it's going to extract for a long time. Make sure to clean anybody else's grounds that are in there away by clicking that little lever. It's very important. You don't want mixed coffees going on with a mixed amount of grind sizes. That's just gonna confuse your entire brew. Now, when I bring beans home to brew them hot, I like to bring home the whole bean. I like to grind it the day of. I'm really gonna get the best flavor that way. This is a little different, and this is the easiest thing ever. You see, I'm gonna use this half-gallon sized container here to contain all of my coffee. So I have here a half-gallon of water. Now the coffee is gonna absorb some of that, but that's okay because coffee is an extraction. I can make it as strong or as weak as I want, well, really as strong as I want, and all I have to do to bring it to a palatable level for me is add more water. So it really doesn't matter how much water I have to add until I've added too much, and then you can't take the water out. So altogether, this pound of coffee is going to yield me about 2 gallons of coffee, which for me, I'll go through in about a week, about 32 servings of coffee, about 16 if I'm having 2 cups a day, 16 days. So 1 for every day and then some for the weekend. 2 for every day and some for the weekend. All right, let's make this. So all I wanna do is pour that half-gallon of water into my pot along with that pound of coffee, and I wanna make sure that everything gets hydrated, everything has the chance to hydrate and extract that coffee flavor. And to do that, I'm just gonna stir this around a little bit. Not a lot, because I don't want a lot of this to hang out up on the sides there. I really want everything to be nice and hydrated and extracted, and we are gonna leave this for about 10 hours. It's time for another installment of sage advice. You know how I'm always saying that the 2 most important ingredients in cooking are time and heat? Well, with coffee, indeed, with any extractions, really. But there's a third one, which is size. In this instance, it's ground size. You see, the smaller the grind size, the less time your extraction is gonna take. The hotter your heat, the less time your extraction is gonna take. So if we take all of these to the extreme, if we do room temperature water and we do a very large grind size, then we're gonna need a lot of time, which makes our sweet spot so much bigger. I said 10 hours, but I've pulled this as long as like 14, 15 hours, and it's still been pretty good. Now, what do I mean by a sweet spot? Well, again, we we visit our triangle for espresso, we have a very small grind size and we have a very high heat with a very high pressure. So our time is going to be very sensitive. Our sweet spot only lasts for about a second, maybe two. And if we under extract, meaning it goes through for less time than we need, we start getting all these kind of soapy, aspirin-y flavors, things that you don't really want. And then if we over extract, say we only need 28 seconds on the espresso machine and I go for 35, it just starts to taste weak and sad and there's nothing really going on. There's kind of not a point anymore. You don't get that amazing mouthfeel that a really good espresso has. When we start increasing our grind size, we can start increasing our time and start increasing our sweet spot. We have a very medium grind for something like a pour over, and that expands our sweet spot to where this coffee is going to taste really good. It's not over or under extracted, to something more like 5 to 10 seconds. For a French press, where we would use grounds of a similar size to what we're using today, but with something like 200 Fahrenheit water, we want like an 8-minute extraction time, but then that expands our sweet spot up into like a minute. So by reducing the temperature of the water and going for a really long time, this expands our sweet spot to like an hour and a half. I remember watching a James Hoffmann video a couple of years ago, and he came out with a set of coffee dice obviously for coffee nerds that have all of this equipment. And you throw the dice and it gives you 5 different variables that you can fit together to make a cup of coffee. And I think one of those was actually temperature, but it gave ranges in the hot, right? But the only variable that had 2 factors to it was always grind size and extraction time. The 2 of them at hot temperatures are pretty inseparable. But you can now use something like this to explain the extraction of tea or tinctures, or to explain why clothes that go in a cold washer tend to run less, tend to leak their colors less than clothes in a hot washer, all right? Or how rosé wine is made. So the next day, what we are going to do is to get something colander shaped and put a filter in it. And this is just a nut bag that I used for brewing beer. And it's doubled up here on this strainer, and that's good enough. You're going to get some sediment in the bottom, but I think of the bottom inch of most coffee beverages as part of the filter anyway. And I find it easiest to pour this into another pot first. If I try to pour it all in the bottle, that's too many mechanisms in place at once. I'm gonna need the whole filter and a funnel and everything. It makes a little more sense to me just to filter into one and then funnel from one into the other. 2 easy steps instead of one insanely difficult one. Now, I said this was going to make 2 gallons, and I wasn't wrong. This container is a half-gallon container. So that means that this is a concentrate. And so what I usually do is to take something like 2 ounces out of this at a time and add 3 ounces of water. And that either goes over ice as a cold press, or it still does make really, really good hot coffee in the microwave, and it still has all that nuance from the long cold extraction time. What I then like to do, just because I'm sort of a coffee nerd, is to get the container halfway down and then fill it back up with water. So now I have myself a 1-to-1 extraction. So now I'm using more of this concentrate because it's a thinner concentrate. I'm using 4 ounces of the concentrate to 4 ounces of water to make a cup of coffee. And then the same thing, when I get halfway down in that, I'll fill it the rest of the way up with water. And guess what? Now I don't have to measure anymore. Now I just have a beverage that I can pour into my cup and drink as regular. Let's test this out. Early next morning, we have our first cup of the day. We have our choice now, cold press or hot coffee, because this makes a really good hot coffee too. All of these nuanced flavors that come out with that slow extraction are present when we heat it up as well. And coffee shops do this. They have, oftentimes you can ask for a steamed cold press. They'll put the cold press in the milk jug and then steam it like they would a milk for a cappuccino or a latte. And it's phenomenal because that agitation makes it very creamy, at least at first. All right, let's try this hot coffee. Yeah, it just kind of dances on your tongue. Everything is very, it's very playful. There are a lot of lighter flavors happening at once. It's still filling my mouth. It smells amazing. It's filling the nasals, and I'm super happy with it. But the way that it wants to be drunk is cold, and I'm not getting a lot on the nose because this is heated up. The molecules are dancing around. This is more subtle, but on the palate, that is very satisfying. You could add cream, you could add flavors, you could add whatever you want. This is your coffee. You should drink it how you'd like. But I am, in my own experience, I do like black coffee. But in my own experience, I've really only ever used cream and or sugar to make bad coffee palatable so that I could get the caffeine in my system, or to expedite the cooling process so that I could get the caffeine in my system. If I have my druthers, I'd rather have a really nicely, intentionally made cup of coffee that has all the flavors of coffee that I don't have to cover up. And I think this method might be one of my favorite for doing exactly that. I did a bunch of coffee videos, which I'll put up on the screen after the bloopers. Get in the kitchen and make yourself something amazing. My hair's kind of messed up. I just woke up, but I don't care because I haven't had my coffee. We have a very medium grind for something like a drip cone, a cone press, a key, kaku, kaka, what is that called? Pour over.